Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. Today we are going to be talking more about the lead up to the Civil War, but this one is going to be more on the politics of the day. Regional tension affects national politics. Americans had always lived with sectional differences, but they temporarily resolved those differences through negotiation and compromise. By the mid-1850s, however, the battle over slavery threatened to tear the nation apart. Traditionally, American politics parties extended across sectional lines. Democrats and Whigs came from the North, South, and West. Presidents, too, had come from all areas of the country. But in the 1840s, American politics increasingly reflected regional tensions, especially over the issue of slavery. Okay, here's a map that kind of shows parties by region in the country at this time. The purple area is going to be known as the Republican areas. Green is going to be Whig, but as you can see, they're pretty much we're going to talk here about the end of the Whig Party. If it is this golden color, it is a Democrat-controlled area, and red is a mixture of other parties. So, just goes to show like how divided the country was, not only on the issue, but by party as well. Decline of the Whig Party. The Compromise of 1850, as well as the policies that grew out of it, caused political upheaval. Millard Fillmore, the last Whig president, angered the South with his support for California's entry as a free state. Northerners, inflamed by his support of the Fugitive Slave Act and popular sovereignty, left the party in large numbers. For the 1852 presidential election, Whigs searched unsuccessfully for a candidate and a platform to unite their members. But with their two visionary leaders, Henry Clay and Daniel Webster, both dead, the party fell back on Winfield Scott, a military hero. Deeply divided over the issues, the Whigs lost to the Democrats, who solidly endorsed the 1850 Compromise that they hoped and believed would preserve the Union. The Whigs would never again achieve enough harmony to mount a presidential campaign. So this is essentially the end of the Whig Party as far as the presidency is concerned. The Whig Party is still going to exist for a while, but they're never going to have a big enough gathering again to send anyone to the White House. There's going to be a few governors and representatives and senators that are still around after this time, but this is where the party is on the decline, and there's no Whig Party today, so that is how it comes to an end. The Know-Nothings. By the mid-1800s, a growing immigrant population was changing the country. For example, up to that time, Protestantism, which included Baptists, Methodists, Presbyterians, and many other groups, had been the dominant American religion. By 1850, however, Americans of Irish and German descent and Spanish-speaking natives of lands ceded by Mexico had made Catholicism the nation's largest religious group. Many native-born white Protestants were alarmed by the change. These nativists raised questions that reflected their point of view. Would Catholics bring ideas that would undermine America's religious freedom? Would the newcomers take jobs away from workers who were already here? Or alternatively, would they be lazy, not work, and become paupers, weighing down society? Regional tension affect national politics. A Know-Nothing party ribbon used in the campaign of 1844. Our country and her flag, Native Americans. According to the Know-Nothings, who were the Native Americans? These are going to be the white Protestant-born people. The Know-Nothings. These concerns fueled the growth of an anti-immigrant movement dubbed Know-Nothings. Because members responded with, "I know nothing," when questioned about their nativist organization, the group quickly gathered momentum. By 1855, the Know-Nothings had abandoned secrecy to form the American Party. Like the Whigs, however, the American Party soon divided over the issue of slavery in the Western territories. Birth of the Republican Party. As the old parties broke up, anti-slavery zeal gave rise to the new Republican Party in 1854. Opposition to slavery was the center of the Republican philosophy. Attracting anti-slavery Democrats, Whigs, Free Soilers, and Know-Nothings, the Republican Party grew rapidly in the North. It included a coalition of businessmen who believed that slavery stifled industry, as well as moral leaders who feared that slavery encouraged vice. By 1856, it was ready to challenge the older, established parties. So, the Republican Party actually grew rapidly. At this time, it was founded in 1854, and by 1856, it was already ready to challenge the older, established parties. So, that's really impressive for a political party to grow in that short amount of time. Sectional divisions split the country. For many years, the North and South tried to ignore or patch over their differences, but by the mid-1850s, the dispute over slavery caused sectional differences to intensify. Okay, so here we have a map that shows how the election of 1856 is going to go, and as you'll notice, based on region is how people voted. James Buchanan is going to take all of the southernmost states and some of the northern states, while and he's the Democrat candidate. The Republican candidate, John C. Fremont, is going to take most of the northern states. And Millard Fillmore, he's only going to carry Maryland, so he's not going to do a whole lot. That's how it just goes to show how the American and the Know-Nothing Party, while did have some success, it's not very long-lasting. The election of 1856. Republicans at their first national convention nominated for president the abolitionist John C. Fremont, a colorful Mexican war hero who had helped win California's independence. The Democrats nominated James Buchanan of Pennsylvania, while the Know-Nothings put up former President Millard Fillmore. Free soil, free labor, free men, Fremont. Under this slogan, the Republican Party tried to rally Americans to reject popular sovereignty and to insist that slavery be excluded from the Western territories. They also campaigned to admit Kansas as a free state, but Buchanan, who promised that as president he would stop the agitation of the slavery issue, won the election, supported by the large majority of Southerners. His running mate from the South, John C. Breckinridge, further bolstered his campaign. Still, the Republican Fremont, with his solid abolitionist platform, made a strong showing, winning 1/3 of the popular vote in 11 northern states. So, this party's first candidate that ran for president won 1/3 of the popular vote, which is a really strong showing for a party's first presidential candidate. Sectional divisions split the country. Dredd Scott's attempt to claim freedom via the courts ended in a decision denying African Americans the basic guarantee of citizenship. The Dredd Scott Decision. While passions still ran high from the 1856 election, another event fueled the flames of division. In 1857, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in the case of Missouri slave Dredd Scott, who had sued for his freedom. Scott based his case on the fact that his master had taken him to the free state of Illinois and Wisconsin Territory, where slavery was outlawed by the Missouri Compromise. In other words, between 1834 and 1838, Scott had lived mostly on free soil while remaining enslaved. With the help of abolitionists, Scott's case reached the Supreme Court under Chief Justice Roger B. Taney. In its decision, handed down in March 1857, the court ruled against Scott. In a controversial decision, the court decided that slaves and their descendants were property, not citizens, and therefore were not entitled to sue in the courts. It also said that the Missouri Compromise was unconstitutional because it was illegal for Congress to deprive an owner of property, in this case, a slave, without due process of law. The Dredd Scott decision came down that even though he was in a free territory, he was still a slave. That's essentially what it came down to. And because he was a slave, he wasn't even deemed human. He was deemed property. No different from a chair or a pencil. And this was a Supreme Court decision of the time. Southerners celebrated the decision, but the North viewed it with alarm. Abolitionists labeled the ruling a Southern conspiracy. Some suggested that the North should secede from the Union. Others insisted that the members of the Supreme Court should be impeached. Leading African-American abolitionist Frederick Douglass predicted that the decision would actually hasten the end of slavery. This is a picture of Frederick Douglass here, and it says, "The Supreme Court is not the only power in the world. We, the abolitionists and colored people, should meet this decision, unlooked for and monstrous as it appears, in a cheerful spirit. This very attempt to blot out forever the hopes of an enslaved people may be one necessary link in the chain of events preparatory to the complete overthrow of the whole slave system." Frederick Douglass, 1857. So while this was a devastating decision for the abolitionist cause, Frederick Douglass was undeterred, and he thought that even though that this was a decision against them, in the end it was actually going to help them. Lincoln and Douglass debate slavery. Throughout the 1850s, American attention was riveted on westward expansion. But no discussion of expansion or any aspect of the nation's future could get beyond the issue of slavery. In 1858, Stephen Douglas and Abraham Lincoln held a series of 7 debates while competing for a seat in the U.S. Senate. Thousands of Americans attended the Lincoln-Douglas debates and listened raptly as the two candidates presented opposing views of slavery and its role in America. Now, remember again, this is Stephen Douglas, not Frederick Douglass. This is Frederick Douglass. This is Stephen Douglas. Two vastly different people. Okay. Abraham Lincoln photographed during his senatorial campaign in 1858. You know, we always, whenever we think of Abraham Lincoln, we think of him as this very old man, but here's a picture of him in his younger days. Honest Abe and the Little Giant. Raised in rural poverty and largely self-taught, Abraham Lincoln began his political career at age 25, when he was elected to the Illinois state legislature as a Whig. By 1836, he had been admitted to the Illinois bar and was practicing law in Springfield. He soon gained a reputation for integrity and directness that it earned him the title Honest Abe. Lincoln seemed to be staunchly opposed to slavery, but his political life was marked by a desire to steer a middle course. So while his personal opinion was he was against slavery, he never really took a strong stance against it up to this point. In the 1840s, Lincoln had served a short stint in the U.S. House of Representatives, supporting Zachary Taylor and his policy of admitting California as a free state. But Lincoln's real political career began with his opposition to the Kansas-Nebraska Act and its implicit support for the expansion of slavery promoted by rival Illinois politician Stephen Douglas. Stephen Douglas is the man on the right here. Douglas was in many ways the opposite of Lincoln. Lincoln was tall, lanky, and slow of speech. Douglas was short, round, and filled with energy and a commanding voice. These qualities earned him the nickname the Little Giant. His critics, however, questioned his motives and his sincerity. Unlike Lincoln, Douglas supported the annexation of Texas, and he promoted popular sovereignty as the solution to regional tensions. But many wondered if he promoted these policies because he believed in them, or because he had a financial stake in the railroads that would profit from them. So people are, while they like some of the things that Douglas says, they wonder if he actually means them, like, for real, or if it's just because he is going to have financial gain in them. He was a big railroad man, and because of that, he was going to get a lot of money the further west the country expands. So more expansion, the more railroad has to be built, more money in Douglas's pocket. So it's for that reason a lot of people, while they liked the things he said, they were a little leery of him. They didn't really know if they could trust him. Douglas's position. Douglas had supporters in both the North and the South. Though he was not a slaveholder, his wife had inherited slaves, and he was somewhat sympathetic to slavery. Popular sovereignty, he insisted, was the implied intent of the Constitution. He expressed this sentiment in the 7th and last debate. This union was established on the right of each state to do as it pleased on the question of slavery and every other question. Stephen Douglas, 1858. So Stephen Douglas was of the opinion that this country was established so people could do as they chose. And I mean, it's hard to argue with that idea, you know, the idea of personal choice and doing things as you see fit is kind of part of the Constitution. So it's kind of hard to argue with him on this point. Douglas was seeking the support of both Southern and Northern Democrats, but while some Southerners supported him, many Northern Democrats distrusted what they believed were his self-serving motives. So once again, we're seeing here that people kind of look at Douglas as a man who's gonna look out for himself first. Lincoln's position. When Lincoln stood before the same audiences, he spoke of the eternal struggle between right and wrong. He repeatedly referred to the Dredd Scott Decision as wrong. He attacked popular sovereignty as wrong. He condemned slavery as a system whereby one person does the work and toil to earn bread when someone else does the eating. While Lincoln, like most white people of his day, ridiculed the idea of social and political equality with African Americans, he strongly affirmed the idea of their natural rights. So while he was not in favor of full equality, he was opposed to the idea of slavery. Here's a quote from Abraham Lincoln, 1858. "There is no reason in the world why the Negro is not entitled to all the natural rights enumerated in the Declaration of Independence, the right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I hold that he is as much entitled to these as the white man. In the right to eat the bread without the leave of anybody else, which his own hand earns. He is my equal and the equal of Judge Douglas and the equal of every living man." Abraham Lincoln, 1858. Now, I do want to pause here for just a moment, and I do want to address the language here. There is a difference between the language that we use today and the language that was used in 1858. They spoke in a way and used terms that back in these days was not considered impolite or improper. That today we know today that we would not use in our everyday speech. So if I say something whenever I am quoting someone from the past in a way that I'm using words that maybe make you feel uncomfortable, I do apologize for that. Know that I do not support using that type of language myself. Anybody that's had me for class knows that I have a pretty strict rule about speech that is accepted in class and is not. Whenever I am quoting a person from history, I am going to quote them directly. Does not mean that I support using those words. And you all know what I'm talking about. So, carrying on here. The debates lasted for weeks. When they were over, Douglas won the election by a slim margin. But Lincoln had not really lost. As a result of the debates, Lincoln won a large following that would serve him well the next time he ran for national office. And I think we all know what that next national office he's going to run for is. Okay guys, that's going to be it for this video. If you have any questions, you all know how to get a hold of me. I hope everybody's having a great day, and I will see you again next time. Bye.